Good evening, respective viewers. It's George from Ireland. Welcome back. Check out the new jacket. Okay, the heating's only just coming on. But anyway, so I'm talking about what Iran is doing up in the Middle East. You might say, what on earth is this regime playing at? Now, they have a touchy relationship with Pakistan. Iran is about 90% Shia. Pakistan is 20% Shia at most. And so the Shia, the few that there are in Pakistan, mostly vote for the Pakistan People's Party. The others overwhelmingly Sunni, the other parties, and indeed some of them, the Jamiat-e-Islami, are actually viciously anti-Shia. So they have a difficult relationship with them at the best of times. Now, they're obviously at daggers drawn with Saudi Arabia, partly just to see who's the big daddy in the Middle East. Even go back to the time of the Shah in the 1970s. It was difficult, even though the Shah ran a secular system. So Iran's been under sanctions on and off for about 40 years, but they've become adept at circumventing them. They've obviously been arming and funding the Houthi rebels in Yemen for decades. And the United States Navy claims to have interdicted a boat carrying various components for missiles to the Houthis. Because you think, well, how on earth do they actually smuggle these weapons there? Because you have to sail them across the Arabian Sea. The Saudi Arabian Navy, the Emirati Navy, and so on, navies of various Western countries, could stop them. Because that was they're cunning enough not to carry the whole whatever it missile, to dismantle it, and then it's a lot easier to hide. And obviously they can't stop and search every single ship. There's just too many of them. And just very small fishing vessels, which you wouldn't bother stopping to search. So these things do get through. $100 billion doesn't sound like much, but that goes a very long way in a country like Yemen, which is the poorest country in the Arabian Peninsula. Now, I might say, you might say, but Qatar is one of the richest countries in the world. All right, but still, even by world standard, Yemen is a less economically developed country. So why are they provoking everybody? And I'm wondering, is it escalate to de-escalate? Because they cause so many headaches for Western countries and various other opponents of theirs. What they're doing is imposing multiple trilemmas. They say, okay, what do you want? Okay, we'll give you something. We will concede something to you, so long as you calm down and appease them. It might actually work, but you think that's a very dicey game, because people may not make concessions, and there could be a full-scale war. I don't think it's going to happen, but obviously you just can't rule it out. It's closer than it's been since at least 2015. And were it not for the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, a lot of people said the United States would have gone to war against Iran. I don't see it myself. I think it probably would have been airstrikes, not a boots on the ground war. Obviously, the United States has extricated itself from Afghanistan and Iraq at considerable cost, and not entirely successfully. So I think there's really no appetite in the United States or any Western country to do that. And the United Kingdom was rather unwise, I think, to join in these airstrikes on the Houthis, because the UK, even if you think it's legal, even if you think it's morally justified, the United Kingdom just doesn't have the capability. It's stretched very thin. The armed force is about half of what they were in the early 90s. Bear in mind the population has increased about 20% in that time frame. So obviously, the Iranian government would like friendly governments in all its neighbors, if possible. But the other thing is there's an awful lot of dissent in Iran. Real opponents are banned from standing for election, just like in Russia. We might say in Western countries, they're going to be prescribed as well, opponents of whatever the establishment is, because they'll be called extreme, which is a worthless word, just means I don't like you. Who ever calls himself extremist? That is what you call other people. So there's really no proper definition of that word. But anyway, it does actually silence the dissidents, because even the dissidents, they don't want Iran to be invaded, because they see what's happened in Iraq, in Afghanistan. And yes, there's democracy now in Iraq, but a very high cost. And in Afghanistan, all right, the Taliban are overthrown, but they came back 20 years later, and the people who were in charge in the meantime were often drug lords, so not necessarily good. And is it worth it? If the United States and other countries were to liberate Iran at the cost of one person, that might be worth it. But what if 1,000 Iranians were killed for the sake of freedom? Would that be worth it? Maybe. What if it was 100,000? What if it was 1 million? There comes a point when it's not worth it, where you better say what you have and think, is there some sort of chance of changing the system relatively peacefully? Because a year ago, the British Foreign and Commonwealth Office gave it a 50% chance of a revolution in Iran that year. It's much lower now, But the dissidents, they feel, well, they're going to have to sink their differences with the regime and just defend the country against outside threats. So that might be part of the strategy. So there may be method to their madness. You think they can't afford to fight on so many fronts all at the same time. They've got a very cordial relationship with Iraq, where the Shia majority is in the saddle for the first time in centuries. Since there's been freedom in Iraq, they've been allowed to elect people, and the Shia dominated parties have come to office. And so they've got very good relations. Obviously, Iranian military units there, very cordial relations with Syria, because President Bashir al-Assad's Shia minority, they dominate it. They formed alliances with Christians, and of course, there are some Sunnis in the cabinet as well. So to some extent, they have things their own way, but there is this deadly rivalry between them and Saudi Arabia, and they only restored diplomatic relations last year after a breach of several years. And the Saudi Arabians really don't want to get involved in conflict in Yemen. They tried that for almost a decade, and there is this delicate peace which they really don't want to shatter. So one thing about the Iranians, they'd like to shift the spotlight onto Israel, onto what's being done to the people of Gaza, because there almost all Muslims agree with them on that one and say, well, at least the Iranians are standing up to Israel, and that they're arming and funding the Houthis. And the Houthis say, well, we're going to hit Israel, or pro-Israeli elements say that the United Kingdom, the United States, Germany, really all Western countries, they at the very least do commerce with Israel. Often they sell Israel weapons or indeed provide it for free and so on. So we're going to have to attack Israel supporters and bring it home to them that whilst so many civilians are being killed in Gaza, they shan't be safe. So they've got to get the Israelis to pull out, things like that. And so even those who are very much opponents of the Houthis, they do applaud them for that one. And so it makes it more difficult for countries like Saudi Arabia to take action against Iran for that reason. So that might be why they're doing it as well. Their missile strike on Pakistan is because they said that Iranian opposition groups were there in Balochistan, that province of Pakistan, which is adjacent to the Iranian frontier. And Iran regards them as terrorists. Well, some of them are armed, it's true. But the Iranian government will execute just about everyone. It's one of the death penalty capitals of the world. I mean, per capita, one of the highest rates of execution in the world. Like dissident bloggers, Iranian bloggers who've gone to Turkey, for example, be arrested by the Turkish police and extradited back to Iran just for criticizing the Iranian regime. And such people are sentenced to death and occasionally executed. So yeah, it really is horrific. It really is violently oppressive. And obviously there's a junior generation in Iran that really wants change. So they want liberation, be able to do what you want, say what you want, wear what you want, eat what you drink what you want. And if you wish to be a very strictly observant Muslim, fine, nobody's going to stop you. But they demand there be no such imposition of Sharia law on everybody else, which is not to say that no one supports a theocracy. It does have genuine supporters. Some people who are older, some people in the countryside, the less educated, are into it, the more religiously observant, even in the big cities. And there's also self-interest as well as ideology. Some people who've done well out of the regime, who've got access to oil and gas, even though they totally don't adhere to the ideology, and their children studying abroad and living it up in Western flesh pots. Anyway, thank you so much for watching my channel. Make sure you subscribe on Patreon, and make sure you donate on PayPal, georgecallahan79@gmail.com. So make it a massive donation. Thank you so much. Toodle pip.